Intro song. John,
Yancy,
welcome.
thanks very much.
And to our two viewers, welcome to Brit and Boer. We've actually decided on a name since last we recorded, and that is now Brit and Boer, or as you would say,
Brit and Boer.
Brit and Boer. Yeah. So tonight's question is not on this because this is a prop.
Okay.
So, but the question is bad policy driven by money or ideology? Now, just by way of introduction, my name is Yancy. I am the village idiot. This is John. He is a political figure from England, from the UK. And he's got quite a lot of political savvy, and I think he's the correct person to answer this question.
I would actually say I'm apolitical.
Yeah. Apolitical?
Yes. Yeah.
But that's what I said, you're a political figure.
Oh, okay. Now, in terms of your question, I think I'd really like to understand, when you talk about policy, are you specifically referring to kind of public policy, like national public policy? Or are you referring to it in a more general sense?
So let me give an example. In South Africa, there are 140 plus race-based laws. This is not thumbsuck, this is factual. That's bad policy. Anybody can see it's bad policy to discriminate against a different group based on skin color, beliefs, anything like that.
In the UK, we'd call that racist policy.
Yeah, I don't like the word racist. I am a racist because I love the human race, and there is only one race. I cannot imagine snogging a Wookiee, for instance. They're far too hairy, you look at some of these other gross things I've seen on Star Trek and Star Wars. I can't. I'll stick to humans. So I'm a racist. I love the human race. So ethnic is, I think, the more accurate term. But let's say racist laws, right?
So, again, it depends whether you're looking at the prescriptive or descriptive definition of words used. So I think when we talk about racist, I think what we normally mean is what your man on the Clapham omnibus would say that word meant, which is a kind of unqualified, unjustified, unfair discrimination towards a particular ethnic group purely on the basis of the fact that they belong to that ethnic group. Yeah,
I suppose it's much easier to say racism than ethnic groupism.
Yeah. So what I would say is if we can allow that is descriptively what the word racist means, then the policies that you just allude to in South Africa, I would say, are frankly racist policies. They're unfairly discriminative against people purely on the basis of their, through no fault or merit of their own, belonging to a given ethnic group.
And I want to expand on that. It's not so much that it's just because we now white, it's bad for us. It's demonstrably bad for everyone, right? If you discriminate against one group in your country, it's inevitably going to lead to a downturn in economic well-being for everyone. Am I right?
I think statistics and history would tend to concur with what you just said, because let's just imagine, for argument's sake, that the formerly dominant ethnic group in this country, the Afrikaners, were all evil.
It's my people.
Yeah, let's imagine all your people were evil. Nonetheless,
theologically evil, because I believe that we are born evil.
Okay.
But the Bible does speak of a good man and a bad man. But you're not talking in terms of we were born.
I'm not speaking theologically prescriptively.
Okay.
I'm speaking descriptively, vernacularly, if we can say it that way.
Okay. Yeah.
In other words, what would the man on the street think we meant if we said a certain group of people were evil?
Yeah. Like Hitler was evil.
Yeah, for example. So let's just imagine, for argument's sake, that every single Afrikaner, prior to the abolition of apartheid, was evil. Okay. Nonetheless, if the Afrikaners, through whatever historic advantage, happened to be in circumstances in which they efficiently generated jobs for people who are not Afrikaans, and just to develop this argument, let's just assume that everyone who is not Afrikaans is good. Nonetheless, you would still have a situation whereby allowing evil people to prosper, you disproportionately benefited people who had jobs as a consequence of the privileges that evil people had. So, for example, if you imagine that, you don't have to imagine, if you look at the statistics, and I don't have the statistics to hand, but what I do have anecdotally is the fact that when I was young, spending time in this country, on average, white families permanently employed, full-time employed, at least one member of staff, even if they were quite poor. So you could have broken homes, single-parent families, where, let's say, the mother was having to go out to work to single-handedly feed her children. She would still typically employ a member of staff. And if you looked at the architecture of these homes, we're not talking about grand homes with swimming pools, just ordinary homes. They had a building, sometimes in the back garden, or maybe even attached to the house, where these people could live. So on average, you had a minimum of a 1-to-1 ratio, and you're talking about people at the lowest end of the kind of economic ladder, if you like. Now, what I notice moving around South Africa is that very, very, very few families permanently employ anyone. At best, typically, they'll have someone who comes in for, examples that I've seen, they'll come in for 1 day a month to do the garden, or they'll come in for 1 or 2 days a week for maybe 3 hours at a time to do the cleaning. And that's quite typical now. I don't know if you have different data. No. Okay, so the situation you had previously, and again, I'm not making any kind of ideological comment on what I would describe historically as the evils of apartheid. I'm simply observing the fact that during the apartheid era, things were set up in such a way that more people had employment. Now, obviously, if you could then transition to a situation where there was not that unfairness or disrespect for certain races and maintain those levels of employment or even improve them, that would be highly desirable. The question really becomes, is it in the interests of the people that you are trying to kind of historically redress the wrongs that they suffered, to now put them in a situation that is ideologically superior but economically inferior? Does your average person thank you that he's now treated with more respect but doesn't have a job? That's a very valid question to look at. And because I would argue that that probably is not the result at the moment, certainly I would not be advocating apartheid because it's against my personal principles. However, what I would be criticizing is the way that transition happened. When you look at how things were done during the apartheid regime, they were quite kind of, I suppose, authoritarian, And one of the consequences of that authoritarian administration was that education was quite strict. Standards were strictly adhered to and maintained.
And quite high.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. I can remember even shortly after the end of apartheid, I left the UK where I got like 8 grade A's at GCSE. And I came to South Africa and I got only got 1 A, and I got B, C, D, E. I think I even got an F. Okay, because I could not keep up with the academic standard that still existed at the time in 1996 in South Africa, when I'd been spoilt with an easy education, a dumbed down education in the United Kingdom. So standards were certainly very high. Now, of course, I'm not going to say that's because the people who oversaw apartheid were good people. I'm simply pointing out that that was an outcome of that kind of authoritarianism and strictness. Personally, I favor quite a kind of libertarian way of allowing people to live, provided certain essential laws are enforced that protect our interests against incursion from other people that don't have a respect for fundamental kind of basis of law and order. However, if you look at the circumstances at that time, when things were in the hands of, we can even say, the evil racists who oversaw apartheid, things actually worked quite well from a technical perspective. So, for example, in terms of the provision of electricity and kind of basic utilities, those things did tend to run like clockwork. So now let's imagine the ANC managed to gain a majority. They took over the government. In my opinion, the smart thing to have done would have been to have phased out the evil Afrikaners in a controlled way at the same speed at which those skills and capabilities were transmitted to the new people coming in. In other words, like in, let's say, I don't know, you had like an electricity company or something like that. You can say this electricity has been managed by evil racists. Okay, fine, that's accepted. So what we want is a certain number of those evil racists to stay in the organization while we start bringing in good people who had been historically disrespected on the basis of their race. And we're going to ask those evil racists, we're going to pay them to do it, to start transmitting their skills to the good people. And if they're too evil and racist to do it, well, then we're going to find ones whose desire to pay the bills, pay their mortgage, and feed their families outweighs their desire to prosecute their racist attitudes in a workplace environment.
Strut their stuff and puff their chests. And...
Yeah, so that would have been the smart way of doing it. What I think was not smart was to kind of wholesale get rid of them, take over these structures that were in perfect working order and put them in the hands of people who, and I don't blame them, because they were denied the access to that level of education that would have given them the capability to manage these entities at the same level of efficiency as the evil racists that had control of them before. But nonetheless, the historical fact is that they were denied access to that education, and so they were not equipped to take over these entities wholesale, absent there being evil racists to assist them with that migration, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. I want to expand this further.
Yeah.
Lest anybody thinks it's a rail or rant against the ANC, which probably it is, but bad policy is not a South African thing. I think it's a human thing, and you see it in all sorts of countries. Historically, you look at figures like Hitler, Stalin, I believe, would probably fall into the same category. It may have been, he smiled every now and then, though. Stalin. I think he smiled. Hitler didn't really smile.
No, no.
Yeah. Any case, these
Except
are,
when he was in the mountains with Eva Braun. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, but that was never captured on camera.
I think it might have been, yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
was AI generated.
Okay.
He obviously
Okay.
used AI to
Yeah.
generate this, or Ava, for a
Yeah.
Facebook post. But in any case, I think so. So these men, you look at communism. In my opinion, communism is terrible. Not because it looks good on paper. I'll be honest with you, it looks good on paper, but it seems the throw in a few humans into the mix and it just messes up everything.
Do you know, if I can just respond to that very briefly, just to prove that what I said previously was on the basis of my understanding of the logic of the problem, I would say a similar kind of thing about a system that I also don't agree with, the system of communism. If you so now, in South Africa, just to make the comparison, if you go into the homes of a lot of old people, they'll say, oh, yes, apartheid was wrong. But if you ask your average African who's now suffering, they'd say, oh, if they weren't being recorded or something, they'd say, oh, yes, I wish we had that system back again, which is a bit of a weird thing to say because it's not a binary thing. Do you know what I mean? Whereas if you go to former communist countries in Eastern Europe, people over about the age of 50 say the same thing. They say, oh, yeah, well, during communism, we all had jobs. There was a sense of civic cohesion that is absent today. There was a sense of belonging, identity. Everyone knew their role. Things were managed. It was a managed economy. So when you went to school, you were told, if I've understood this correctly, your particular municipality needs a certain number of engineers. You've been assessed as having potential to become one, so you're going to be an engineer. So you're going to go to a technical college, learn engineering, and then you're going to serve in that capacity. And of course, we, with a more libertarian bent...
Well, if you don't do that, then we shoot you.
Yeah, we we would say, oh, that's a bit unkind and inhibitory, telling a person what they have to do for a living. But at the end of the day, everyone had a job. Yeah, everyone could earn a living. Well, there was no incentive to do exceptionally well beyond just personal pride, which was inculcated, in terms of pride in your nation, because of course it was competitive during the Cold War. We have to be seen to be doing well, otherwise the evil capitalists are going to cite us as examples of the failure of communism and all that kind of thing. So of course I don't like it. I don't like the lack of motivation, the lack of liberty. However, it is, I think, a fact that many people over the age of 50 today, living in certain Eastern European countries, would argue that people were happier and more cohesive under communism. And so I would say a similar thing, that when you break down the Berlin Wall and communism collapsed, there ought to have been a more gentle transition period into capitalism, and certain strengths that the communists did achieve under communism ought to have been perpetuated and kind of phased out slowly, because now with everyone just choosing their own job, it's like if everyone chooses their own wife, you might have 10 men all going for the same lady. What
should we actually do that?
So yeah, but you get the point. I'm not just saying that in kind of right-leaning kind of administrations, those people had something to offer and that they should have been phased out slowly. I'd say the same in strongly left-leaning administrations. Wherever they've achieved cohesion and structure and proven success in some capacity, you don't just destroy that overnight and try and replace it. You phase it out in a measured way.
So you basically just killed my argument. So I just want to apologize. This is what happens when you sit with a man with an IQ of 325.4. So I'm sorry to the two viewers. So what I'm going to have to ask you to give me now are examples, or give me at least one example of something that is terrible, a terrible policy.
Yes.
And let's get back to the main question.
Yeah,
What drives
absolutely.
it? What drives the bad policy? Is it money? Ideology? What drives it? And we spoke the other day about men like Soros, right? He has all the money in the world.
Yeah.
He has no reason to be what is considered a bad guy.
Yeah.
Right? The guy, okay, so just to clarify, we believe that abortion, for instance, is bad.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, Bill Gates, for instance, is a very much pro, what they would call pro-choice and women's health. We would say it's murder, right? I'm also pro women's health. It's just the women I'm trying to protect haven't been born yet, right? So give them a chance.
Yes.
I'll be up them. In any case, so so what drives bad policy?
Yeah. So
Bill Gates doesn't need more money.
Yeah. So no, that was quite a big diversion away from the original question that you asked. But I'm going to blame you because you took us on that tangent that I just had to respond to.
I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry once again.
But let's imagine you'd just asked the question. I think the responsible thing to do would be to first look at that question in a little bit of detail. And if I look at that question, you know, when we are asked questions, because of our kind of Prussian educational model that we've inherited both in the United Kingdom and here in South Africa, we tend to want to give a kind of a Boolean or binary response to it. But actually...
0 or 1.
Yeah, and or all. But actually, that question itself, I don't think really merits a kind of a Boolean-esque response. Because if you ask me to differentiate between money and, because we're not talking about money, because money's not capable of thinking.
It's
a
a
relationship
moral.
with money. Yeah.
Is that the right word?
Well, I think we normally, well, it could mean that's so bad it doesn't even have any morals.
How did the word amoral become bad?
Yeah.
Immoral would be bad.
No, that's half as bad. But
okay.
But the point
it's neutral.
The point I'd really like to make is that of course money is just a tool. It's not capable of being responsible for anything. It's of course our relationship with money. So I wonder if we could kind of modify the question a little bit to say the desire for certain people, which now we have to define as the question develops, the desire for certain people to have more money than they currently have, or ideology. I don't know if that's a fair way of looking at it.
That's a fair way. So let's simplify it even more.
Yeah.
In other words, the love of money or ideology.
It's potentially problematic because within the context of our Judeo-Christian paradigm that we spoke about much too much last time, the love of money has negative connotation. So we can't dispassionately consider the merits of the desire of pursuing money, because the moment we define it as the love of money, we can't love money because we're Christian, and the love of money is the root of all evil. So I think it's going to be more constructive to define it as the desire to attain more money than we currently have, which obviously is in many cases legitimate. Because and you may not want to define it that way. You may want to be more kind of morally binary. But if you'll allow me to begin with that definition to begin with, I'll explain why it's important. Because somebody in the position to make a decision on policy cannot be known from the perspective of persons who are affected by those policy decisions to have an unhealthy desire for money or a healthy desire for money. And if you entertain that assertion, you have to consider the possibility that it may actually be very difficult, if not potentially impossible, to differentiate between the desire to get money and ideology. Okay, now I know I'm losing you, and I'll be losing our two viewers as well. So I'm going to actually give you maybe even 3 examples. Okay, so firstly, let's take something that we were looking at earlier today in a completely unrelated way. Let's take Google. Okay, Google claims to have an ideological basis for its decisions.
Yep.
Its motto, I think, is "Don't be evil." Okay, and when Google talks about how it wants to improve the services it gives to users, it always frames them in moral language. So Google will say that we want to give you reliable results. The way they talk in terms of how owners of websites should write content sounds as though it serves the interests of the user. They use quite moralistic language. It's meritocratic language. Okay, and yet if you look at decisions that they have made, like notably with the hummingbird algorithm back in 2012 or 2013, I think when that came out, which effectively pushed all commercial websites off the front, well, I exaggerate, but substantially negatively impacted the ranking of commercial websites on the basis that if a site was good, to continue to use moral language, there would be evidence that that site was good because the general digital population would have already identified the merits of that site and linked to it. Now, of course, if you're dealing with the movement of information and it doesn't have any kind of commercial component, that's logical. If somebody wants to make an argument, they want to convince you of something, they will find the most convincing, credible, reliable source to point to as evidence of the merits of whatever argument they're trying to make. However, when it comes to something commercial, there's absolutely nothing in human nature that would advocate any kind of logic to link to a website owned by somebody else who's involved.
Your competition.
Necessarily so, because if it's not your competition, what on earth are you doing writing within a commercial context in that particular sphere? So logically, the only relevant people to link to are your competitors within a kind of commercial sphere. So Google is then making a declaration that sounds as though it's upholding its ideology, which again sounds moral, and yet what it's doing is requiring commercial websites to spend money on advertising in order to regain their prominence on the search engines. You see what I mean? And of course, after that highly moral decision to help readers with more relevant results, what happened inevitably is that owners of companies had to massively increase their advertising budget, and that was given to Google. So Google will simultaneously hold 2 things in its mind: an ideological pursuit to improve results to users, and a commercial pursuit to improve their bottom line.
Well, yeah, because they've got shareholders.
Exactly. And
what you're saying is, are you saying that Google is actually a politician? Is that what you're implying?
Well, remember, there were 3 examples that I was going to give you. And I think all 3 of these examples, when viewed together, will actually support the argument that there's a kind of a cyclical relationship between ideology and the desire for money. Is a bit of a crude approximation, because one could want silver, one could want gold, one could want intangible digital assets.
4 or 5 bicycles against the wall,
for example.
Yeah.
But one could also want, so to move on to another example, if I've finished with this one, I wonder whether I have. All I'm really going to say about the Google thing is they may genuinely believe that bringing out this algorithm that damages commercial websites and prioritizes informational websites, they may genuinely believe that was a morally good decision. Okay, it just so happens to be substantially economically advantageous to them. And I would argue the way we choose ideology is pragmatic and self-serving, whether we realize it or not. And I would even extend that argument into what traditionally may be argued to be the most altruistic spheres. So let's move next into an allegedly altruistic sphere. Let's talk about our own subscribed religion of Christianity. Do we, within Christianity, now let's extend money to the acquisition of gains that are material and significant. Okay. Now, do we as Christians ever do anything that is not self-serving? Or have we got an incredibly efficient form of selfishness if our proposition happens to be correct?
Yeah, if you ask an atheist, you would say yes. We have just found the perfect formula, because it's a pretty good formula.
Yeah.
Because we basically, what the atheists believe about the biological reason for self-preservation and the preservation of others, we have it in scripture, right? Yes. So they stole it from us. Let's be honest here. Be honest. If one of you, the two viewers, is an atheist, so they would say it's biological. We would say no, it's prescribed.
Okay.
Our God wrote it down for us, right? So it is a superb way to look after yourself. Is if you love another as yourself.
Yes.
Right. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Because it applies to everyone. Everybody every Christian who reads that, you read it. Yeah. You read, and I'm going to paraphrase. You read that view others as more important than yourself, and I read the same thing. What are we going to do? Yeah. We're gonna honor each other, right? We're gonna love each other. You're gonna give me coffee with honey, right? And if Malcolm does have honey at his stall, I'm gonna buy the honey, right? Yeah. So in a sense, it's a synergy and it's symbiotic, right? But it's based on what's written, which is the other, one another's.
That's right. Yeah,
one another's. Yeah. So
and that logic, I think, is very reliable.
Yeah.
Okay. However, we can even go further than that. Let's imagine we give away all our possessions to the poor, and that looks extremely altruistic. Let's imagine we even give our body to be burnt. Okay.
Sounds suspiciously much like 1 Corinthians 13.
Yeah. Okay. So imagine we do those things.
Yeah.
And let's imagine your gracious atheist watching us do these things, genuinely thinks that what we're doing is altruistic. Okay.
Because he can't see our heart.
Yeah.
Humans can't see other humans' hearts.
No.
So we believe the best of others, right?
Well, yes.
Unless, of course, you're like one of these YouTube stars who just videos everything they do. Look at me being so kind to the whole world. And just,
But let's imagine that this atheist is conducting covert surveillance on us and has all sorts of sophisticated technology, and we don't even know we're being watched. Even the things that we do in secret, like our left hand not knowing what our right hand is doing, giving to the poor.
You're making this atheist sound like God.
Okay. And so he looks at us, initially cynically, thinking, oh, what are these selfish Christians up to now? And then he sees what we're doing and he thinks, oh, wow, this is actually genuinely altruistic. They must just be mentally defective. I can't see any way in which these actions will translate into benefit for these people.
Bunch of idiots.
Yeah. So let's imagine that is the impartial perception of our actions. Nonetheless, that's entirely false. because there is nothing that we do as Christians that we do not believe will be rewarded many times over. And people may say, oh, well, it's not about money or anything like that for Christians. But I mean, actually, according to our kind of economy, material gains in this world are relatively insignificant. What shall it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his soul? And we are told that in the afterlife, anything you give up for the kingdom of heaven's sake, you'll have at least 100 times the equivalent of in durable value thereafter, in the afterlife. And so if we, poor cretins, indoctrinated cretins that have been brainwashed by our parents since we were very young, genuinely believe this kind of nonsense, okay, from the perspective of nice observers who are looking at us, wondering why we do apparently altruistic things, I can tell them that it's absolutely not altruistic because we genuinely believe that we have a reward. So we may do things that are ideologically motivated, but actually that ideology serves our own interests. You could even say material interests, because we believe in the resurrection. So we're not going to be floating around as disembodied spirits somewhere vague. We're going to have a physical, concrete, tangible existence with perfected bodies. So our gains will be physical, and they'll be vastly more valuable than the material wealth that we're capable of accumulating in this life. You see what I mean? So we can't look at people who are ideologically driven and say, oh, these people are evil because they're doing it because of their love of money. Because we love something far more valuable than money. Because let's just say that in the afterlife, we have no interest in our many mansions, corporately speaking, that Christ says he'll prepare for us, because these are just physical things. And our greatest appreciation is our physical proximity to God himself. Okay, that's far more valuable. Think about super rich people in this life. What do the super rich people eventually realize? There's no point accumulating physical assets. Experiences are far more valuable. If you're only going to live for 70 years, so they'll pay like, a couple might pay like $20,000 to go and climb Kilimanjaro in VIP style for a week or something like that.
Which, by the way, Team Kilimanjaro offers, right? It's one of the premium Kilimanjaro outfits out there. Go Google that, Team Kilimanjaro.
Yeah. But you get my point.
They do VIP tours exclusively.
So super rich people who may love money because of what the money can give them. The money can give them extraordinary experiences. Now, we love something more valuable than money, and that is an extraordinary eternal experience. You see what I mean? So it's all self-serving.
Which we don't see yet.
No. But we're so effectively brainwashed. Yeah.
By the man Jesus.
Yes. Yeah.
Who walked the earth.
Yeah.
Even Bart Ehrman says that 2,000 years ago. He didn't say it 2,000 years ago. I mean, Jesus walked the earth 2,000 years ago. Even Bart Ehrman does not dispute that.
I know Bart Simpson, but who is Bart Ehrman?
Bart Ehrman is a scholar. He's a New Testament critic. Okay. He's not a friend of Christianity.
Okay.
He was a Christian, and
right. He like deconstructed himself.
He deconstructed.
Okay.
Bart Simpson, I don't know what that thing is.
Yeah.
The dude doesn't even have 5 fingers on a hand.
No.
So
No.
Yeah, I would say I'm a racist against whatever the Simpsons are. Yeah. They're not human. They have 8 fingers. Have you seen that?
What's
wrong with those aliens? Any case.
So anyway, the argument I'm making is that you can't actually extricate ideology from the pursuit of material benefit. And again, I'm defining material benefit for us in an eternal sense. I'm pointing out that there's something even better than tangible material benefit, which is experiential benefit. Do you see what I mean? So that's the second example. And the third example, did I ever mention to you my experience with the crazy billionaire
Yeah.
I did, yeah. Okay. So in his case, he was trying to do something to serve his country, and he was strongly ideologically motivated. And
He was an atheist, right? Yeah.
yes, maybe he would have described himself as agnostic.
Okay.
Yeah, but highly intelligent and genuinely patriotic
To
to the United Kingdom.
To UK.
Yeah. To the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Yeah. Okay. And so his motivation in contacting me was genuinely a patriotic one. He wanted to implement, because he knew that I was an advocate for direct democracy. And he claimed that 7 years prior to contacting me, he had written a manifesto for a new political movement in the United Kingdom based on replacing representative democracy with direct democracy. And that was the basis of the appeal that he kind of created to motivate me to go meet with him. And when I met with him, I found it was true. He showed me his super secret manifesto with all sorts of celebrities having written different sections. Obviously, they were paid to do so. That wasn't ideological. But again, that's a complex distinction. So he was ideologically motivated. He wanted to implement direct democracy in the United Kingdom. And he claimed to have £100 million ring-fenced in order to do that. Okay.
Sorry, John, if I may.
Yeah.
You said something small now, which kind of makes you realize it. And this, obviously, he's in our camp. So we wouldn't say whatever his ideology is or was bad, right?
No.
So he got celebrities to write sections of it.
Yeah.
And obviously he paid them.
Yeah,
which
that was my understanding.
Which ties in very well with the whole question. But then it doesn't necessarily, the question isn't necessarily is bad policy driven by money or a love for is policy.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
So those people, you get people who, they can be bought, right? There's a price.
Yes.
Some people can't be bought.
Yeah.
No matter, you can give them the world, they'll not budge. Some people will, it's just, it's just a matter of ironing out the price. And once you get to a sufficient number, they'll bend your way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, sorry, I just wanted to say that. That was quite ironic.
It's a very valid observation as it pertains to the question. Yeah, so absolutely, that's very, very valid. But just to dispense with this example, the point I'm making about this, it's one politically ideologically driven individual. Nonetheless, he was already talking to me about what he wanted to achieve once we achieved direct democracy in the United Kingdom. And it just so happened that he wanted to put to the vote the decriminalization of marijuana, because it just so happened that he had vast amounts of land somewhere where it was legal for him to grow that substance. And if you would ask, how would that be morally justified, he would use a kind of libertarian argument that we would use about alcohol. And he would say that people are growing it in their attics using electricity, what you call it, hydroponics and that kind of thing. And, so if people are doing it anyway, why criminalize people who want to make bad decisions? That would be his argument. And he would frame that argument ideologically. And it just so happened that his ideological stance happened to be highly beneficial in terms of the amount of money that he was likely to make. And we are quite literally, I did a little calculation. He gave me lots of figures. I went on Google, I looked at satellite images to see if he was he was exaggerating, and everything that he told me in person, as far as my capability to verify it was limited, seemed to match very closely. And he was talking about potential gains quite literally in the hundreds of billions of pounds over, I can't remember how long I calculated it over a number of years. It's not per year, but it was a huge amount.
Staggering.
Yeah.
Even over a number of years, it's...
Yes.
I mean, this is the pound.
Yeah.
This is not Zim dollar.
That's right. And now, when you look at our political motivations, I don't really think any of us is even smart enough to formulate an ideology that's divorced from any kind of perception of personal benefit. You see what I mean? Why do we subscribe to a certain ideology? Because it allows us to do a certain thing that confers a certain benefit. Isn't that the case?
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you're honest about it, I've had, I don't want to call it fights. I've had some intellectual battles with friends of mine who used to challenge me on why I did certain. Obviously, you don't want to do things so people can see it, but we touched on the subject why we do good. And I would say for me, a personal driver for me would be eternal life one day, what Jesus is going to give me. And they'd get upset with me. Oh, but you shouldn't. But Jesus himself spoke of reward.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think what it comes down to is God knows that we are really broken, man. And he knows that we are driven by incentive. He knows this, right? And so he allows for certain policies, for lack of a better word, in the scriptures for us to so that we can relate. Right? There's no way I'm going to be good just because for the sake of being good.
No.
Reward drives a person, right? So we jog in the mornings. There's a reward to that. Right? If there weren't no reward for that, I wouldn't do it. Right? I'm sorry. This is me. I'm sorry if that's not you. Fantastic. Me, I'm very much driven by incentive.
Now, all I would say is that we have evidence that not everybody is. But the number of people who are not, I believe, is so small that when we discover them, it's hard to forget them. But I can tell you, like right now, there are 3 people that stick in my mind that I don't think I will ever be able to comprehend their motivation. Chronologically, well, no, it's not chronologically, otherwise the second one would come first. But chronologically from...
Do you know the Bible does say those who are first will be lost, and those who are last will be first.
But the first is Moses. I think you know what I'm going to say. I have absolutely no way to relate to what he said, where he offered to be damned for the sake of his fellow Jews to be saved.
Paul said the same thing.
That was my number 3, And my number 2 was Christ. Because if you are God and you're making the rules, why would you make a rule for yourself that required yourself to, to inherit humanity and then to be separated from your kind of co-eternal Father for the sake of regaining something that could have been yours in the first place anyway, if you made it up as you went along or chose not to be bound by your own rules. That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, so chronologically he's second, but positionally he's first, I suppose, right?
Well, and chronologically first as well.
Oh, of course, because he's not created.
Because he created the universe.
He created Moses. But that's a staggering thought. Jesus he doesn't need us.
No.
There's no incentive for him to die on a cross. It's just, the only thing is, this proves is just how magnanimous he is. It beggars belief. So that's a fantastic example.
Because you often wonder, well, why did he not write the rules differently? I know it's a little bit of a departure from the question, but it's ideological as well. And in a way, if we're talking about the pursuit of money, and money is just a coarse approximation for the acquisition of material wealth, and material wealth that's tangible and material is just a degraded version of the experiences that material wealth allow us to acquire, then actually what Christ did falls into the same category. He was ideologically driven to do something that resulted in him making massive gains. You see what I mean? So, but of course, the question is, now, here we've got to be extremely careful, because I don't want to risk kind of veering off into kind of ephemeral theology that goes beyond Scripture. Okay, so I say this extremely cautiously. But if you can imagine that he made the rules differently, and he didn't allow man to rebel, and that man was always with him in the first place, of course, if you didn't know anything about Scripture, you'd ask the question, wouldn't that be a better plan? And the question is obviously answered in Scripture. He's asked the same question parabolically. And he explains about the two people, the one who was forgiven very little, or in the second parable, the one who never went astray. And then in those two parables, the one who was forgiven much and the one who did go astray and came back to his father. And the question is asked, which will love his Lord the more? And of course, in both cases, it's the one who was forgiven more.
Fell furthest.
Yeah.
And hardest.
That's right.
Yeah.
Will love more. And then in this case, the one who went astray and came back. And so my understanding of that, and again, it's thoroughly relevant to ideology, particularly if you are the entity with a capital E that creates the dominant ideology that controls the entire movement of the universe and everything in it, that ideology is vastly superior to what we might naively think of as a superior ideology where man doesn't have the opportunity to fall. Because, of course, it is absolutely true. You could change all the variables and then just make a total nonsense of this conversation, but changing just one variable at a time. And human nature's capacity for appreciation of various things being what it is, our love towards God is vastly more because of what he's rescued us from. You see what I mean? And so let's imagine like if the Godhead were making this decision according to their secret council at the beginning of the universe. They might have gone through all the possible permutations of how history could be released. And one might be to never allow Adam to fall in the Garden of Eden. And then they might have, and forgive me if this is disrespectful, this kind of anthropomorphic kind of analogy, but they may say, well, actually the problem with that is that the intensity of love that man would feel towards God, and that's not to serve them, because they're already complete and perfect without man. They don't even need man. It's for the benefit of the one who does the loving. You see what I mean? Is vastly superior if they're rescued out of that situation. And so, so in a way, I kind of refute my claimed inability to comprehend completely the motivation. And I can say I partially comprehend the motivation, but again, if they are capable of thinking of an infinite number of permutations, and I'm only capable of thinking of 3 or 4, I can't comprehend how there could not have been a permutation that didn't require God to become a man and die and be separated. I mean, that's a pretty bad thing, but then to be separated and to be given the temporary lack of comprehension, as is evidenced by his necessity to ask the question, why have you forsaken me? That's quite impossible really for me to understand. Yeah. So Moses, that was genuinely altruistic. I can't see any way around that. Paul, talking about the Hebrews, I think in the letter to the Hebrews, being willing to be...
No, it wasn't Hebrews.
Oh, what was it?
Romans.
Okay.
I think it's Romans.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's Romans.
Yeah. So anyway, that is completely incomprehensible to me. Where does Paul say how much he loves the Hebrews and he would even be willing to be written out of heaven for their sakes if it were possible? Yeah. So anyway, those three examples, I hope, go quite a long way towards proving the inextricability of ideology and the pursuit of material gain.
Okay. All right.
You're right, it's Romans chapter 9. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Let's ask this question. Was George Soros pushed up against the wall in grade 3 and punched in the nose by a bully?
Okay. I think, I can't say I know loads about him personally, but all I do know...
Bill Gates.
Okay, but I mean, just to use Soros, and because he's a real person that actually exists and could refute...
Bill Gates also is a real person.
Yeah.
I know people say he's an alien. What is it? What do they say? He's
like a lizard.
Lizard man. I think he's a human.
Yeah. But I mean, Soros, from what I understand, his problem was that he had extremely developed survival instincts and high IQ. And when you combine those, it's very tempting not to customize your own morality for short-term benefit.
Oh my soul, hang on. Where does this leave us? Because you've got an high IQ and
no, not like
you okay. Yeah. What's your surname?
But you get the point.
Yeah.
So when you're young and you can see a way out of being taken to a concentration camp and destroyed. So look, from your perspective, let's imagine you're young Soros and you're thinking, look, these guys, one way or another.
The Nazis now.
No, they're the Jews. Right?
Oh, because he's a Jew.
Jews,
fellow Jews. Yeah.
One way or another, they don't really have any survival prospects.
They're going to get the short end of the stick.
That's right. They're going to end
Doesn't matter how he's done the infinite number of scenarios, and he's come to the conclusion that it's tickets for the Jews.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
And he's going to save his own skin, which is a natural thing.
Yeah, from his perspective, why not?
Yeah.
Because why should, let's say there are 100 people he was responsible for having been sent to the concentration camps. Okay. As he would reason it, and I'm probably speaking well outside my moral bounds here, but as he would reason it, if his silence and lack of cooperation could preserve one of his fellow Jews for another few days before they got caught by the Nazis and sent to a concentration camp, well, what have they really been advantaged by his lack of cooperation? He's just delaying the inevitable at the expense of his own survival. So if then he says, look, it's like, you watch these movies where someone's captured and they're going to give away information. And people who are captured, I don't know if you probably do, but they are trained to give away information as soon as they have justification to believe that their life is at risk. The skill is to release the information at a speed at which the people who know that you've been captured and are likely to release that information can act to protect themselves against the consequences of your imparting that information. So, of course, you do give away the information, but slowly, not all at the same time. Otherwise, you're not useful anymore, and they might as well just kill you. Yeah. So there's a controlled release of information from the point at which you come to understand that they have the intention to kill you if you don't cooperate. So now, if Soros, who obviously was not Special Forces trained, but was probably smart enough to work out the Special Forces training doctrine by just assessing all the available variables at the time, would have made similar calculations, wouldn't he? He'd have said, well, look, why delay the inevitable at the cost of my life? These guys are going to be caught anyway. Why don't I just show cooperation, become a valuable asset to these people who have the power of life and death over me, and just accelerate the inevitable? So in the process of doing that, he was basically customizing a pragmatic morality for himself. The
situation ethic.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Exactly. And so once you've done that, now you can go two ways. You can either feel really guilty and start turning to drugs or something to try and kind of turn your reality into something kind of amorphous that doesn't have such kind of repeating kind of stark impression on your sense of yourself, or you can justify it and toughen yourself and accept marginalization and work out how you can use that marginalization to your personal benefit. In other words, okay, look, nobody likes me anyway because of what I've been compelled to do by my intelligence, my awareness of the limitation of the available options that I have.
And the fact that God doesn't exist.
Yeah, because
that's the conclusion you have to draw.
Yeah, part of the process.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do that anyway, if you've basically given yourself permission to create your own morality, why not take advantage of that? And so I think that's what he's done. I think he's got, it's easy to say, oh, he's so evil and we should hate him and all that kind of thing. But again, I think a lot of people end up becoming what they are because of the circumstances they've been in. And it's not a justification. It's simply a kind of a realistic analysis.
That's the human heart, right?
Yeah.
And I think, just on that point, Jesus doesn't want us to hate anyone.
Doesn't want us to hate anyone.
Yeah, Hamas. We are supposed to love. I know people don't want to hear this, but Jesus said we must love our enemies. Yeah. Right? So you love your enemies.
Yeah.
You'll sort them out.
Yeah.
So in any case, just on that point, it's a little bit of an A side. See, it's an A side, but not an M side.
Oh.
Why is it amoral? Why is amoral a bad thing? I don't understand that.
Yeah.
Why is apolitical, but amoral is a different thing? I don't know. You don't get impolitical. Impolitical would have been, I suppose, the equivalent to immoral.
Yeah.
Okay, but in any case, all right.
Yeah.
But I suppose most politicians are impolitical in that case.
Yeah. Well, most politicians are statistically party political. In other words, they just choose a camp that's the closest fit, and then just toe the line.
So they basically, what somebody accused, Nigel Farage of one day, I heard this lady, you're a career politician. That's basically what it comes down to, right? That's what you're saying. It's just a job.
Yeah.
It's a job. Yeah. All right. So which ties in, I think. For a lot of people, it's just a job. Whatever is the path of least resistance, gets me some money in my pocket.
Yes.
That's my policy.
Yeah.
Your policy becomes whatever is, that's why a lot of these actors are purchasable. You can buy these oaks.
Yeah.
To stand for your silly little cause of ridiculousness. Yeah. Because you can pay them.
Yeah. Do you mean like the paid protesters and people like that? Or do you mean
not necessarily. Politicians, actors, anybody. A lot of people you can buy them.
Yeah.
You can buy them. And I suppose throw in desperate measures. If hunger runs high and somebody says, listen, you have an opportunity to come and protest here, all we want you to do is scream and shout like a madman, and we'll give you some chow or some money to buy chow. It's very easy to say yes. Who's going to be ideological in that moment?
Yeah.
And so, in any case, I think it's a complex question, and you've given us some complex answers to chew on, but it's never simple.
No.
It's never, listen, it's only money or it's only ideology. Because for a lot of people, those two things are blurred. Right? Ideology and your needs go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So it's not that simple.
But before we brainstormed this together, if somebody had asked you the question, what would have been your response?
It was something I've often thought of. And to me, it seems like the classic case of a bullied child. In many of these cases, these people don't need money. Soros, and I mean, Mr. Soros, I would love for you to come onto the show. Maybe you can explain what happened. Because I'm loath to call anybody evil, but anybody who is pro-abortion, I don't know, man. I don't know if I can call such a person a good person.
Yeah, but again, we're speaking from a necessarily biased perspective.
Absolutely.
From within the context of our very concrete paradigms.
Yeah.
So
I'm not even going to deny that.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you imagine, for example, we happen to be born into an environment where it was normal to reason atheistically, then it would be difficult to criticize his morality and Bill Gates' morality. And I mean specifically with respect to his burden to reduce the world's population, future population, not accuse him of reducing the current population. Because again, if you are brought up to believe that
the future is in your hands, there is no God. The planet, we are the custodians of the planet. There's no God. What are you talking about?
No.
What rook jy, bro?
Yeah. Because if you kind of subscribe to the survival of the fittest mechanism for the flourishing of a species, then as a species, you have to, within our context, how humans survive, you need to define fittest. Now, perhaps a long time ago, that might have been the ability to hunt. Now, of course, that's irrelevant.
Now it's the ability to write code. No, use AI.
Yeah.
The most efficient.
Yeah, that's right. But it's really the ability to leverage other people or tools, like digital tools, for example, or financial instruments, or whatever your thing is, to achieve maximum impact from the decisions that you make. You singular make. And so anyone who has a lot of resources at their disposal is necessarily, within that economy, fitter than somebody with fewer resources at their disposal, which means that Bill Gates is one of the fittest people in the world. Yeah. There would be a very close correlation between how much money they could make available if they liquidated their assets and how fit they are. And then if you are one of the fittest, you have a big responsibility, because you now become responsible for less fit people, in the same way that if we were a group of hunters, like a few thousand years ago, well, I don't know, let's say 4,000 years ago, we're a group of hunters and you were a better hunter than me, you would have a responsibility towards me. You'd realize you couldn't survive on your own. And that I am useful to you even though I'm an inferior hunter. And so you would make it your business to ensure that I survive by leveraging your superior skill set. So that's really what they're doing. They're thinking we have the superior skill set of being able to reason more reliably than our inferiors. And I think they get it wrong, and I think the evidence indicates that. But let's say people who influence policy, maybe by leveraging their finances, could get an entire nation to make it illegal to have more than one child. For example, if they had a kind of some moral imperative to prevent a problem that they perceived to be caused by a growing population. So let's just imagine, I don't think he was, but let's just imagine Bill Gates was somehow responsible for that Chinese one-child policy. Of course, that's a bit of a nonsense because the timings don't match, and his sphere of influence, wasn't really compatible with that. But let's just imagine that Bill Gates, with his Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, that has the objective of, influencing family planning in a way that economically unproductive people have fewer children and that kind of thing. The whole kind of eugenics model that we discussed last time. He would think it was his responsibility, the same way it would be yours as a superior hunter to look after me. He would think it would be his responsibility to use his influence.
Yeah, he's the head of the household, and he's looking out for the children's interests.
That's right.
The child wants to put his 7 billion kids who want to put their fingers into a plug socket, and he knows better.
Exactly.
It's all it comes down to.
That's right.
So in a sense, it's a superiority complex.
If you perceive yourself to be amongst the fittest, So so how that works in kind of practical, real-world terms is that let's just imagine that you were one of the fittest, and you believed it was your responsibility to influence public policy in those ways. And let's imagine, before the recent evidence has emerged, you thought there was a genuine problem with growing population. Would it not make logical and moral sense for you to invite a minister or a party whip out, or one of the big donors of the party that already has influence that you want to leverage, to some fancy meal in London or Strasbourg, or depending on who you're trying to influence, and to put the idea into their mind that it would be a good thing to reduce the degree of stigma that was attached to homosexuality before homosexuals were given equal rights to marriage. Because then by doing so and normalizing that, then young people who are questioning their identity as they're growing up, if it is a normal option for them to consider that identity, you're contributing to a thoroughly moral cause by facilitating more decisions that ultimately end in that condition of not being able to produce more population. You see what I mean? So it then becomes a logical necessity to influence governments, to make decisions such as to equalize the status legislatively of homosexuals with heterosexuals, or in the case of whoever influenced that policy in China, the one-child policy that they're now desperately reversing and now offering tax incentives if you have multiple children, ironically. So the survival of the fittest concept and the kind of atheistic paradigm, if we, just for the sake of argument, accepted was correct, would inevitably translate into an obligation to influence public policy in ways like this. And who on earth could call that immoral unless they were biased, influenced by religious dogma?
Yeah. Movies have been made about this, and books have been written. Yeah. I remember Watchmen. One of the clever guys in Watchmen, Ozymandias, which is the name of a king, if I'm not mistaken.
The one kind of fallen apart, lying on the desert.
Yes, there were two poems written about Ozymandias. And one of the characters is Ozymandias. He's not a superhero. Are any of the Watchmen actually superheroes? They're superheroes in the sense that they don't have superpowers. any case, he kind of went on the same type of thing where he wanted to save humanity, and and how do you fight that sort of ideology if you don't believe in God? You have to be a stronger man than the guy you're opposing in this. Otherwise, it's tickets, man. You know what I'm saying?
I think so. Yeah.
There's if you try to argue your point against someone who says, listen, we are in dire need of a population cut, and things are looking really bad for planet Earth. The only way to battle that is either by ideologically becoming stronger than him, right, physically, or however you want to put that, or if you want to win an argument, he's got more money than me, so he's obviously going to beat me. But if you want to win the argument, you have to put in God into this argument. That's how I see it in any case. So I think. So what I want to say is, I think that pretty much concludes this talk. So what I want to say is, do not bully any nerds. If you sit at school, if your kids are at school, let your kids take the nerd an ice cream or something.
Take the nerd what?
An ice cream or something.
Ah, okay, yes.
Give the nerd a treat or something.
Yeah.
Don't bully those nerds.
Yes.
They often turn into really bad people.
Yeah.
Ironically.
Yeah.
And I think, it's sometimes the love of money, sometimes the bullied kid, sometimes it's a mix.
Yeah. But even the bullied kid, remember, you bullies have contributed to his ideology. And his ideology has been customized by him in response to treatment that he suffered, and it's formulated to help him achieve certain benefits. So again, I would say it's pretty much always inextricable, ideology from benefit. Yeah.
Okay. I forgot to mention something. I do want to say we are looking to interview people on the show. And so there are two rules. You have to be either smarter or better looking than me, or both, which pretty much opens up the door to about 8 or 9 billion people, right? How many people are on this planet?
I gather about 8.25.
So 8 billion plus. So if you're out there and you want to be interviewed, I don't know about drummers.
Drummers.
Yeah,
like people who play the drums.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I'm trying to understand the relevance of that.
Or bassists.
Fusion.
But in any case, anybody else? Okay, we'll take drummers at this stage. It's early days. We'll even accept drummers. I don't know what any case, never mind. So, but thanks for joining us, and thanks for watching and for listening. As always, it's been fun to speak to you, John. It's always lucky to speak to someone with an IQ of 355.3. I spoke to someone with an IQ of 355.4 the other day. Oh, it was horrible. Such a stupid guy.
No, once you go over 355.3, it just becomes boring.
It was just, dude, just shut up with your quarks and your,
Quarks.
That stuff. Quacks.
Yeah.
All right. Anyways, thank you very much.
Thank you.